Okay, I think I have my text set up. Hey, welcome everyone, and thank you for coming by my text set up. Oh, I do need to turn the volume down though. And probably here too. Okay, so hopefully we'll get this start going here. Let's try this one again. Welcome to this live stream where we're going to be taking a tour of my bookshelf. And I wanted to welcome you to this live stream today. I'm still working on the tech issues here to improve the quality of the video. So let me know how it goes. I bought a new camera, so hopefully that will help out. So if you're new here, my name is Althea, and I'm here to talk about sewing, having ADHD, and all things history bounding and historical costuming so that you can creatively thrive through the art of sewing. So today I thought I would show you around my sewing bookshelf. We're kind of living in a golden age of information where, you can type in search and find pretty much anything that you want to find. Thanks, Ellen. I'm glad to hear that the video is much better. I did buy a new camera, so yay! I'm kind of excited about that. So, while we can pretty much, find anything we want on the internet, there really is no substitute for having a book to read. You can hold it, you can smell it. I mean, seriously, who doesn't love the smell of old books? And I have really few vices, sadly, and I know book buying is not really a vice, but I never pass up the opportunity to add to my collection. You never really know what kind of inspiration you're going to find in these old vintage sewing books. So I'm going to start with what I have on just one section of my shelf, and then we'll go to some online sources for where you can download and access free vintage sewing books. Some of them going back really far, so we're kind of excited about that. And feel free to share any of your own favorite sewing books in the comments below. And if you're watching me in the Facebook, feel free to share any links to any other online sources or your links to your own favorite books. Looking forward to sharing that information. So we'll just go ahead and get started. So my books tend to range from the 20th century. I haven't found any that I felt comfortable purchasing from the 19th century, and a lot of those books are online. It's just I don't have the right atmosphere and conservation for those really old books. But I really like these 20th century and especially the earlier 20th century books, just a kind of the window to, the world back then. Back in the early 20th century, there was no Amazon shopping, and most women were expected to sew most of their own clothes, sew their family's clothes. And so sewing was just something that women learned to do as one of the gender roles that they had back then. And so these books are great little windows into that world. And so let's go ahead and get started. So unfortunately, a lot of these books don't really have a lot of exciting covers. Over the years, they probably have lost the paper covering, but this one is how to make clothes that fit and flatter. And this book is really a lot of fun. Let's see, when was it published? So I could see through my eyeglasses, that would be awesome. So this is 1969, and this book is really awesome because it gives you great ideas for how to alter patterns. And a lot of these books, one of the downfalls was that, they assumed that you already knew a lot about sewing. So sometimes you have to read between the lines. But this book is really good, especially if you're doing sort of a 60s retro look. All of these books, can really help you create that retro look that you're going for. So the next book is tailoring. Tailoring traditional and contemporary techniques. This is a little bit more modern book. It is 1981. And again, this, you can tell I've used these books a lot. There's just a lot of really good hands-on information here. And this one is really good because it shows both the traditional and modern techniques. Ellen, yes, you absolutely can link to this on Facebook. I know the links are sometimes hard to find. Even I have a hard time finding the correct links in Facebook. It's just, they don't make it easy for folks. So, this one has some of the different hand techniques for tacks and things like that. If you're doing a lot of history bounding or historical clothing, these older books are really good for getting those historical construction techniques. And Priscilla on YouTube asks, are these books still in print or on an internet archive? Some of them are on the internet archive, and I'll talk about them. Some of them are out of print. And basically, I troll used bookstores for these. And while you may not be able to find these exact ones, it kind of gives you an idea of the types of books that are available out there. I do have an online bookshop that I will be talking about later that does have some of these other books. But again, I'll be sharing some of the online sources here in a little bit that you can get for free. So I like this one, The Secrets of Distinctive Dress. Some of these titles are just lovely. I just have so much fun with them. So this book is 1918. So, this is during the height of the First World War. And this one actually has some photographs of very fashionable people. It has little tissues. It's mostly just talking. This is pretty revolutionary for the time. It had, ooh, wow. Does not like that focus. So this one here is just basically a lot of talking about the aesthetics of the time period, talking about lines of figure and dress, talking about clothing conservation. So this one is just kind of a more about what dress was like and how it was viewed back in that time. Again, this one is from 1918. I'm going to have a heck of a pile here on the floor. So this one here, I do see on used bookshops fairly frequently, the new Dressmaker. And it is from the Butterick Publishing Company. The pattern companies used to provide a lot of really good educational information in these kinds of books and in courses. This one is from 1921. And we're starting to see more photographs in these books. So this one here is how to work with plaids. Here we see how to hem, and we're talking a little bit about drape. You can see that the hemlines are still fairly low. This is 1921, so it really hasn't gotten to the much higher hemlines that were more common later on in the decade. So I have a tendency to put the receipts in the book so that I know where I got them and how much I paid for them. And if you're ever in Lincoln City, over on the Oregon coast, go to Robert's Bookshop. This place is so amazing. It is this labyrinth. You know, every good used bookstore is a labyrinth, and it just kind of wanders all around, and it's always very harmful to my pocketbook. But the really cool thing about that bookshop is that they have a lot of cover art from books over the last 100 years. So they purchase the original artwork and then show it with the book cover as it was printed. And, you know, you can just sit there and look at this wonderful cover art. And then they have some other fun artifacts. They have a Roman spear and things like that. So while I'm looking at books, my husband is usually wandering around looking at the artwork. He used to be a comic book inker, so that was really interesting to him. So this book here, you know, it has, oh, there's my handkerchief, some really good information on how to make different things from that era. So this one is another one from pretty much that same series from Butterick. It's just a different time. This one is from 1911, so it's 10 years earlier than that previous book. And this one here, again, shows how to do some different pattern adjustments and patterns. So this is really good, you know, if you're trying to recreate garments from that period, you can pull directly from these body blocks and different things. This is 1911, and they have some information there on military dress. Don't really see that very often in books. So one of the things about these early books is they can give you really detailed information on these fiddly types of things, whether they're plackets or welt pockets or pad stitching. They're just really good for providing that kind of information. So this next one is Home Dressmaking, and let's see when that one is published. 1942. So this was World War II era. So it would have had a lot of information in there on how to really conserve fabrics and how to work with smaller amounts of fabric. Let's see, oh, this is kind of fun. How to do trims using scrap fabric. This one here, doing a little bit of a rickrack, using some bias tape for giving some flair to edges. A lot of these books, especially the wartime ones, were really about making do. So here we have some more information on hemming. It gives you a good look at the shoes that they wore at that time period. So these books are just, you know, fonts of really valuable information. Like here's some embroideries for underpants and underwear. Okay, let's. Okay, so thank you, Amaris, and oh, Liz, I'm sorry that your notification didn't go off. Luckily, I was struggling with the tech at the first few minutes of the video, so you didn't miss as much as you might have if I was actually able to start on time. So we're getting into the more modern sewing books, and this is one that I picked up very recently Actually, my mother-in-law gave me this one, so I'm not really sure how to take that. And it gives different talks about different, let's go to this page here, different types of trim, different types of elastic. And when you're getting into this more modern period, we're starting to see supplies that we might be able to go pick up at the store. And these are, really good about creating patterns and doing different ways of fitting lingerie. I've been thinking about making my own bras because, the struggle is real on trying to get a well-fitting bra. Frank, I believe I commented another time that there are very many videos out there on how to thread that vintage sewing machine. I will be doing more videos on that treadle machine that I got. I just haven't put them together yet. So that is on the docket. So this is one of the more modern books that I have that I use all the time. If you can find a version of this, there's many different editions of it, and you can very frequently find that one in used bookstores. My edition is from, let's see, 2001. But it talks about, what couture sewing is, and it gives some different, just kind of background information. There's a lot of information about doing hand sewing. And let's see. So when it comes to couture, really the genius of us being able to sew it here at home is, we can spend the time to do these kinds of hand finishings and, just really tarting up the outfits that you just don't have, we probably can't afford if we were to go down and try to purchase it. And these older books, I have another one that I'll be showing you here in a little bit that is, just all about different techniques to pump up the quality and the uniqueness of your clothing. And this one has a little bit about the jackets and a little bit about tailoring. I'm on one of my pals' books. So here's an easy guide to sewing jackets. And this one is based mostly on modern techniques. There's not a lot of, historical type of hand stitching, but this one is really awesome because it has a lot of really good, clear photographs. And then there's sewing with knits. I haven't sewn with knits a lot in the past, even though I mostly wear knits. I find constricting clothing to be really annoying, so I wear a lot of knits. So this one is from 1992 when Palmer and Plesh was putting out a lot of really great information. And again, that's definitely 1990s right there. I probably had that skirt. And again, lots of really amazing, clear photographs. Yeah, Ellen, I've been working on this collection for a really long time. And, I don't spend a lot of money on makeup, and we don't go out a lot. So really books are my my one vice, where if I find a sewing book, even if I already have it, I'll go ahead and purchase it, because that way I can pass it on to someone. So this is another one, and I found this one to be a great book if you can find a copy of it. It's a newer book, and let's see, where is it? What year is it? 1992. But it has lots of really good illustrations. Sometimes it's better to have illustrations than photographs, because they can really get in there and show you the details. And I love this hand-drawn illustration style. So this goes all into how to do the different serging techniques. And I do have a serger, and I have used it some. I'm working on a Cavalier-inspired wardrobe, well, a few outfits, and I'll be using knits a lot. So I'll be making myself sort of a piratey jacket using a beautiful wool double knit that I'll be using probably a serger on at some point. But serger are also good for finishing edges before you sew, so that you don't have all that ravelly threads. So this is a book I've had probably, good gravy, since I was an undergraduate, and that was a really long time ago. And I like this book. This is one of my favorite books. What year was this one? 1977. And this one has just lots of just really great hand illustrations for giving you ideas on how to do these different techniques. This is for using novelty fabrics on garments and how to work with those. I had a Bob Mackie phase, and so this book, I use this book a lot to sort of recreate some of his garments, because there was a lot of blinging and shiny stuff in here. A section on passementerie. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. So this book, it's not really in depth, but it gives you a lot of just different ideas. And then you can go look it up in more in depth elsewhere. So this is one of probably my top 5 sewing books that I have on clothing construction. Let's see. For that one, it was Fashion Details, Decorative Tips for Home Sewers. Let's see, and this one is 1974. So I was actually still a youngin' when it was put out. But this one, you know, it's one of those books that if you can find it as an early sewer, is really good, because it just kind of goes in pretty deeply into just some of the basic stuff that, you know, might not be in some of those more lightweight books. But this one really kind of delves into couture methods, like cutting your jacket here with that scalloped edging along the front dart. And then different seam, sleeve and cuff finishes. If I'm going too fast, let me know. And so there's different pockets and different ways of applying pockets. And then there's some basic garments, but this one is really good. Like I said, this one here is in my probably top 5 of the books that I have. And I've had it probably one of the longest that I've had. So there've been different like sewing construction methods or pattern making methods along the years. This one is the Bishop method of clothing construction. And this one was put together in 1959. And again, it's just a really nice basic. This one is dealing with more simple and easy to make garments. So this one would be a good one if you are beginning in sewing and don't want to be scared off by some of the most couture. But it does have a little bit about tailoring in it, but it is a fairly simple book on clothing construction. So this is another one of my top books, and you can find these everywhere in used bookstores, at charity shops. And it is just a really in-depth book. This one was 1976. And it's just basically an encyclopedia of how to do different things. This one talks about cutting and how to position your patterns on your fabric to get the best out of them. This one also talks about pressing aids. You know, if you don't have a hem yet, there's lots of videos on YouTube on how to make your own hem. Probably one of the most valuable sewing tools you will have. And then again, this one just has really nice, clear illustrations on how to do things. So going back and a little bit older than that, the previous ones here. This one is, when was it? 1943. Again, the height of World War II. So a lot of the sewing methods are going to be all about conserving fabric and making do. And the bebes. There's a lot of information in these sewing books about bebes. Let's see. This one has a little bit on knitting. Got some great coats there. So yeah, these are really, oh, this one even has hairstyles. Look at that. So this one would be a good one if you are doing a wartime look. Okay, so I love this one. just for the cover. I love that dress. Oh my gosh, I want that dress so much. And not just because of the red elbow length gloves, but you know, check out the original price on this one, $2.98. Books are not that cheap these days. Although these, you know, buying them at used bookstores, charity shops, really can save you a lot of money. Again, this one is 1943. So there's a lot of information in here from the wartime and how to zhuzh things up. I like this one. Sort of that casual look there. Some information about sport clothes. Now, sport clothes in the 1940s is a little bit different than sportswear today. Those are really fun. I enjoy these. And of course, you know, the bebes. And then a lot of these books have sort of household type sewing also. You know, keep things that we find in these books. So this one here, like I said, it also has a lot of household sewing things. So these are great primary sources if you're looking to do some research on particular eras. So this one is The Complete Book of Sewing. And this one was 1913. No, 1943. Apparently I need better glasses. Again, these are great for if you are recreating wartime clothing. This one is just chock full of information. It's kind of like a little dictionary or encyclopedia of different things. Altering garments, repairing garments was really big at the time because, fabric restrictions. You can only use so much fabric in garments at the time. And so making do was really important. And then here's some housewares ideas for the time period. So these kinds of books by Better Homes and Gardens, Coates and Clark, and Vogue, and all of these, you can find these books fairly inexpensively in used bookstores. Let's see, when was this one made? Oh, it doesn't say. So these kinds of books by these companies, they're fairly comprehensive on the information that it is providing. And these kind of books tend to be fairly inexpensive at used bookstores. Apparently got this one at Goodwill. So here is probably my number one. Okay, I may have said another one was my number one, but this is another one of my number one books. I got into sewing mostly because I have really expensive tastes when it comes to clothing, and I like all of those hand details and those fiddly plackets and seams and things like that. I used to wear vintage clothing almost exclusively, and back when I could fit in vintage clothing. So this kind of book was really key for me to learning all about it. This is a particularly good one because it just kind of starts at fabric. It talks about fabric. There are charts for if you have narrow shoulders, what kind of collars and what kind of skirts would fit with your body type. We're a little bit differently thinking about body, what kind of clothes are for what body type. These days, basically, if you have a body, that clothes are for your body type. But some of these older ones have some of that information that's more indicative of the thinking at the time. And I love this book because, Jiminy criminy, look at that detail on how to do a thing. And then this is really why I love this book. If I can get that up there. I can't seem to, there we go. Yeah, I'm having a hard time with this, aren't I? So it's just all those, little details that make a garment pop and make it couture, that make it, a garment that you're going to want to wear for the next 20 to 30 years. When we sew our own clothes or have someone sew them for us, we're making an investment. It's not fast fashion. We are really making an investment in the future of our wardrobe. And, if clothing is well made and it's well cared for, it can definitely last 20 to 30 years. And since I'm basically lazy, I really don't like shopping for clothes. So I would much rather make a piece of clothing that will last me for 20 to 30 years than having to go shopping all the time. So those books were mostly about sewing. So I have also a pile of books on pattern drafting. And these are awesome because, the whole point of sewing your own clothes is to make sure it fits. And learning how to pattern draft or drape can be one of the most important things that you can do. It might seem kind of scary, but it's a skill that anyone can learn. And some of these older pattern drafting books, they come with their own little measuring tapes. And I've used this one for marking hems because getting that curve can be kind of tricky. So this book was 1971. And just different ways of patterning to get different shapes. And since these are period, I hate to say it, they're period documents. If you're trying to recreate 70s outfits, that would be really useful. So this is my textbook from my undergraduate years. This is one of the very few textbooks that I still have, and I still use it. The fact that it's spiral bound and has survived this long is really impressive. But it's a great basic pattern drafting book. And there's different ways, shows different ways of using pivot points to make alterations in the basic pattern. So this one is garment cutting and tailoring. So this one here has how to draft using measurements. These are projects not for the faint at heart, but they are definitely things that you can do. It just takes, a little bit of time and patience for figuring this out. It's not rocket science. So again, it's a skill that you can learn. And knowing how to make your own patterns means that you will be able to make truly unique clothing that only you have. This one is on draping. Draping is basically using fabric and you drape it on a dress form. This is really commonly used, especially in couture houses. The trick there really is to have the body form that you can drape on. But it really gives you an idea of how the fabric is going to lay on the body. These are fun. I've got a few of these types of books. Let's see. So that other one was draping for fashion design. So this one is make your own teenage clothing and accessories. And it's just a lot of fun. It's fun to see what, teenagers used to wear back in the day. They dressed a little bit more high styled than folks do today. And then there's some knitting patterns here. So I mentioned earlier that there were a lot of like systems and methods to creating patterns. And this is one of them. It's the American way for true fit. And a lot of them came with their own measuring tapes or rulers or shapes, so that you could create those garments. But this one again is based on measurements. And I believe that at some point it had a ruler, but it also comes with different charts for figuring out measurements and size. And they're just kind of fun retro pieces. But again, just using measurements and drawing stuff out. For some folks, that really appeals. They like that fiddly piece. Again, here's a lingerie one. Just really basic. This one was a self-published one from a woman. I think she was over on the Oregon coast. Nope. This one was in Minnesota. Maybe the other one was Oregon. And it's just, different ways of making nighties and different lingerie. There we go. So here is one on pattern grading. So if you get a pattern, for instance, if you find a vintage pattern that's not in your sizes, you have to, make it larger, make it smaller, depending on, whether you're bigger or smaller than the pattern that you bought. And so this book talks about the different ways that you need to grade that pattern. Based on measurements, you have to create differential changes. And so this one is a really good book if you want to resize vintage patterns. It's not a cheap book. It is not a cheap book, but it really has all the information you'll need for drafting or changing the size of patterns. And then there are some books that are out there that are more specifically about patterning for historical garments. And Janet Arnold, St. Janet, has this series of books called The Patterns of Fashion. And if you want to talk about not cheap books, this book is currently out of print, but I think I remember reading somewhere recently that they are planning to do another print run of these books. And so this one is from 1560 to 1620. And so there's a lot of really good information in these books on how to put these garments together. But then you have the patterns. And it uses grid patterns. For doing this. So you can take your 1-inch pattern paper and enlarge the pattern. And so there's dresses. I believe this one has the Catherine de Medici. Let's see if I can find that one. There we go. So we have these beautiful garments, and then the patterns that go in to making them. So there's a whole series of these books by Janet Arnold. And like I said, this particular one is out of print, and they're not cheap. Yeah, Liz, they, like I said, they are issuing these books again. They've all been updated, so I know it's on my Christmas wish list. So I thought I would share some sources online where you can find these older books for free online. And the first place to go to, I'm going to, let's see, share my screen. Let's see if I can do this. Share screen, share screen. I'm going to share that screen. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen. This is the Internet Archive. Now, if you have not found this website, bookmark it, because there are so many free resources here that are just available for you to download for free. So if we go into books, and we'll search for sewing books. So you can see here that we have a whole bunch of different books that are available. So let's just pop into this one here. Now, not all of these are going to be for free. Some of them are. So what you want to look here is download options. This one, I think that you can borrow it for an hour. And some of them, like I said, have limited previews. Let me see if I can find a better one. So some of these you can download for a limited amount of time. Let's go into this one. This is probably one that you can download as a PDF. And this one here apparently is one that you have to download for a limited amount of time. But again, it kind of gives you an idea. You can borrow it for an hour. You can borrow it for an hour with a limit. You won't be able to print it off, but screen caps are a thing. So this is a great one for finding some of these older books. I wish I should have I should have found some that you can just download the PDFs. I know they're in here, but you can spend a lot of time just looking through here. And this is a great website. Like I said, it's not just sewing. Let's go with Internet Archive books. Nope, that's not the one I wanted. Okay, I think here we go. Yeah. So if you go in and choose always available over here under availability, you'll come to this section where you can download the different ways. You can bring it to your Kindle. You can pull it in as a EPUB, a PDF, a zip, and different types of files. So the next one is Project Gutenberg. This is a great one, again, for finding free books. So we'll go here to sewing books. Let's try sewing. There we go. Textile and clothing. So here, book on textile and clothing, you can download it in these different formats. Let's see. looking at this book online. So you can go through the HTML here, or you can download it. We'll go taking measurements out of the petticoats. So this is another great source for poking around and finding those free books that you can just download as PDFs. The next source is Google Books. If you go over here at the top, you can see books as an option. Type in sewing. These are going to be some variation of free to purchasing. Sometimes they have links to Amazon or different places that you can actually purchase it. But this one here, you can read for free. And again, they have lots of different books that you can look at. So here's are the basics of sewing machines. So going on to the next collection, the University of Wisconsin has an archive of books. They had an archive of books earlier. Apparently it's not loading for me. Okay, we're going to go on to this one. The Antique Pattern Library. This is more for embellishments, but they do have books on dressmaking. This one here. Okay, so if you do historical costuming for early period, this is a book that you're going to want to go get. It's mostly on folklore from the 19th century, maybe 18th, 19th century. But patterning hasn't changed that much when you're looking at some of these national folklore garments. And it's in German. But let's go down. Maybe. Some of you might be familiar with this book, but it has just lots of images of folklore garments. And like I said, patterning hasn't changed much since early period to this time. Let's see, there were some patterns, I thought. You know, and these are great because you can kind of see where those seams are. If you're doing Turkish. So this is a fun one if you are doing any kind of folklore costuming. And going back here, let's see, did a paper tool embroidery. So just lots of different books. Here's some, again, different sewing books. Let's go into, I don't know, let's pick this one. I don't know what this one is. So it's a complete course in dressmaking. So 1920s, early 1920s. So again, that's a great resource to have. This Antique Pattern Library, lots of really good information. And then here is a vintage pattern wiki. Now they don't have the actual patterns here, but they do have the covers of the patterns. So if, for instance, you wanted to find what types of garments were around that time, and you find out Simplicity 2763 is, God, you know, some websites just go overboard with the advertising. It's, yes, I understand it's a business, but boy, howdy. so you can search on eBay and Etsy for this particular pattern, and then go back to that pattern grading book and grade it up and down to what you need. So that's what I have for sewing books. I do have a bit of a plug for my own online bookstore. This is through bookshop.com, which supports small independent bookstores. And you can go in here and look at the books that are available. It's constantly changing because, like I said, this connects to independent bookshops, and the inventory is constantly revolving. But, you know, some of these books are fairly older, but they're not going to be the super old ones. But they're still a relatively good price for these. Let's see, check my notes. So if you have any resources, you know, feel free to share in the comments. If you know of any other web sources for free sewing books, these are the major ones, but I know that there are smaller blogs out there that have some of this information. And I'll post some of these links down in the description, probably later on today. And in June, I'm going to be hosting a 5-day challenge that can help you sort of kickstart you into organizing your fabric collection. So if you're frustrated with your chaos, you can add your name to the list to be notified when I launch that 5-day challenge later in June. So that's what I have for the day. If you've stuck with me this long, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and attention. And as always, until next time, get vaxxed, stay safe, and I bid you joy. Thank you.